Good morning, everyone. We are going to get things started. It is 8:01 and I am calling the meeting to order. We have a quorum at this point, so we are not going to take a roll call. I would ask if anyone had reviewed the minutes, and if so, were there any corrections that were needed? Seeing none, I would move to approve the minutes.
Second.
Okay, second. All right, and all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say nay. Hearing none, we would approve those. Is there any public comment today? Okay. Hearing none, we'll move on to new business. The first item today is an adult treatment court update, and I believe Judge Nordstrand and Kate Brewer will be filling us in on the activity.
Well, thank you. I'll just say a few things about things that come to mind about treatment court. I think it's been quite a while since, I don't know, when did we have our last meeting? I should have looked at the minutes. September?
The last full council?
Yeah.
September.
Okay, so it's been a while. I just wanted a context of what's happened since. Well, one thing that's happened, I think, significantly is we've had a decline in our numbers. Once again, we sort of go through cycles, ups and downs. As you know, we have a capacity, I think, of around 25. That's what we could do. We're down to about 7 right now. And part of that has had to do with a couple of things. One, we had a number of terminations, and that happens. We had 3 at one time, basically.
6 terminations in the last 2 months.
So, there's been some challenges for Kate and for the treatment court team in terms of the participants and their activities that have resulted in their termination. So that's an issue, and we work on that together. The other thing is, and we've had a couple of outreach meetings to try to encourage. Is this not working? Oh, okay. We've had a couple of outreach meetings to try to encourage referrals to treatment court. We get very limited referrals from the private bar, defense bar. We get very limited referrals from the public defender's office, frankly. So occasionally we get 1 or 2 from the DA's office even, so that's good. But largely the folks populating treatment court these days are coming from alternatives to revocation from our friends at the Department of Corrections. That's probably half the folks, I would say. People facing revocation for various activities they've engaged in while on probation, and as an alternative to being revoked and being sentenced, they get an opportunity to go to treatment court. The other folks are judge referrals. We've actually gotten quite a few of those lately where judges on their own are identifying folks during this sentencing process that might benefit from treatment court, and I've done it a couple of times recently, and we'll see how that works out. But so there's challenges there. We're working on it. I think the program obviously is very positive for those that participate. We've had a lot of graduations as well, and that's another reason our numbers are down. So we've got some positives and negatives in that regard. The last thing I'll say about treatment court today has to do with an increase in the number of folks that need inpatient treatment. So when I started this process as treatment court judge a few years back, most everybody was being assessed from a substance use point of view and to need intensive outpatient treatment. Okay, so that means they can stay in the community, come to treatment court, and then they were doing the necessary number of hours in a week to constitute intensive outpatient treatment. We were using the HHS services when I first started. We now use Programs for Change as the provider. But we're getting a lot of assessments now right out of the blocks where people need inpatient. And that's problematic in a lot of ways because the only inpatient provider we can really count on is referrals through the Department of Corrections to their partner at Farm and Center in Eau Claire. And then we generally part of that process is they spend some time at Exodus House after leaving that facility, sort of a halfway house setting here in Hudson. But the problem is it can take up to 2 months to get in. So then we've got the problem of what do you do about folks that are not in custody, or maybe they are in custody, and they're waiting to go to inpatient treatment, and they're not really in treatment court, and they're not really not in treatment court. And sometimes bad things happen during that interim, and then Mark and his agents have to deal with it. So that's a challenge, and so we continue to look for opportunities for inpatient treatment to bolster our availability of services. And we also, I should say, we regularly have folks now who are initially recommended for intensive outpatient treatment, and then they're unsuccessful. And our treatment provider says they need a higher level of care, so they need to go to inpatient, so they're discharged from intensive outpatient, and then they're in Never Never Land waiting for a month or two to get into treatment. So that's a challenge. We deal with that every day. And I just wanted you to understand that that's part of the moving parts here. On the positive side, our team went and visited when did we go to Hazelden? December?
I think so.
Okay, so we got invited as a team to go up and visit the facility at Center City, Hazelden, Betty Ford's facility. And we had some positive interactions about the possibilities of some kind of treatment in the future being provided through Hazelden Betty Ford. Those who are not aware, and I don't know, did they make a presentation here?
They did not.
Okay. Be a good idea sometime because they're coming to Hudson. So Hazelden Betty Ford is expanding into Wisconsin, and their first facility is going to be a complete floor of one of the bank buildings down there by Aldi's. They've already leased the space. They're planning on opening in March as they get their regulatory hurdles met. And so we're going to have a new provider for substance use and mental health, I think. It's all outpatient. Now, obviously no inpatient, but the other thing is they are obviously a very large inpatient provider. If we could get past the challenges of the cost of residential treatment and getting it paid for somehow through Badger Care, which is an enormous hurdle, we might be able to get some more folks to another provider, and that would be helpful. So sorry for running off at the mouth, but I haven't talked to you for a while. Kate, what would you like to add?
I think you got the gist of it.
That's it?
Yep.
Nothing? All right. Any questions? I'm happy to take them. Otherwise, thank you.
Judge, I have a quick question. You say 6 terminations. Is that typical with the anxiety and stress of the holiday season, or is that outside variables? Or
Oh, I think I can say categorically that the stress of the holiday season had absolutely nothing to do with any of them.
No.
And they all, what led up to the terminations happened long before.
Some of them, I can just say, there was a large group of participants that were at a treatment facility and using in the facility, and then getting new charges. So that's part of the problem too. We need to find more inpatient facilities. The problem is that even these inpatient facilities aren't reaching their fidelity either because they are short-staffed. And so it's putting all of these clients into jeopardy. Not to say it is their fault at all. They made these choices, but the bulk of our participants, that was something that had happened over the last few months.
And I do want to give credit where credit's due. We wouldn't have this but for the Department of Corrections. I mean, we'd have 0 options for these folks in terms of inpatient. And, we can harp on it takes a long time to get in, but that's because there's an enormous demand. And we we get a lot of folks into the services that are contracted through Department of Corrections, and it costs our participants zero. So that's pretty impressive to be able to get that service, but we could use more. So,
Any other questions? No? Okay, hearing none. We move on to the Treatment Alternatives and Diversion, the TAD grant update. And Phil.
Sure, I'll say just a couple things, and then I'll ask maybe if Kate and Lisa can supplement. So our TAD grant, again, partially funds both our adult treatment court and our diversion program, just for some context. So we have just a couple weeks left until we finish up the 2024 grant cycle, so we'll be finishing up our billing and invoicing to the Department of Justice. So we'll be closing the books and then looking forward to 2025. Some updates for 2025. For our grant, we received some additional funding from the Department of Justice to support another part-time data entry specialist position, which will be housed in the diversion program. So each program will have someone that will be doing data entry roughly 25 hours a week. I think Lisa is going to maybe do some interviews at the end of this month, and we'll have somebody on board in February. The other item that is potentially maybe going to, I won't say help some of the issues that Judge Northern just identified, is we received a sum of about $10,000 of funding from the Department of Justice to use on substance use care for our clients in both the treatment court and diversion programs. Now, $10,000 is kind of a drop in the bucket when you talk about treatment court or any type of treatment care. However, I think it might be able to offset some of the barriers, just maybe one barrier, financial barrier. It doesn't solve access. It doesn't solve bed space, but we're pretty excited about that. Those are only guaranteed one-time funding for 25, but we hope that those resources will carry into 26 and then into 2027 when the grant becomes competitive again. I think those are probably the big updates for TAD. Kate, Lisa, do you guys have anything you want to add?
Just in regards to the position, the data entry specialist position for diversion, we received 22 applications for that, and we will be interviewing on January 28th. So we hopefully will have a good candidate and be able to get that going in February. The position will be extremely helpful in regards to diversion data and being able to have more information, and I'll talk about more with the diversion update with the outcomes and performance measures for our program.
Any questions for any of them? Okay, Lisa, you are up again for a diversion program update.
So in regards to that data entry specialist position, we completed with the Department of Justice. I was on a subcommittee to evaluate the diversion program outcomes and performance measures for pre-charge and post-charge diversion programs for the state of Wisconsin. We spent probably about 9 months working on this document, and it was recently finalized in November. So I do have some packets at where the coffee is. If anybody's interested in having one, it's 77 pages, so I didn't print a ton of them. But if anybody wanted it through email or anything too, you certainly can get a hold of me. But with that data entry specialist position, we will be able to, we're going to really use this document to have that person collect all of this data and analyze it. With our program, we have myself and then a full-time case manager and a part-time case worker. And with our caseloads, we just don't have the ability to analyze all of our data that we obtain. So with this position, with it being 24 hours a week, we will really be able to focus on collecting all this information. The document includes what the DOJ categorized it as gold star and silver star evaluations. So obviously we'll be reaching for, the gold star data to be able to present. So it's something that's really exciting for the program, and it will be super beneficial to be able to really have all of that information and be able to analyze it all and how everything is going. Other than that, just with the diversion program update, the diversion program case management specialist will be going on maternity leave probably next week. She will be back in mid-April. So we'll have 12 weeks that we'll be down one person, which is going to be difficult. So, court-wise and everything, I hope everybody can kind of bear with us while we're going to be down a person. But other than that, everything's going great.
Any questions about the diversion program? All right, then we will move on to Phil for our Justice Support Services update.
Sure, thank you. So I want to do two updates about justice support. The first, looking back at some 2024 numbers that we put together for year end. So I guess this was about 2 years ago, we took over the MRT contract, the Moral Recognition Therapy, which is a cognitive behavioral group. We took over that contract from behavioral health, and we contract with the Department of Corrections to serve their clients. It's a weekly group that our wonderful case managers here in the audience run on a rotating basis. We served roughly 200 client sessions in 2024. So again, each week the clients meet, and I think our numbers are a little low right now, but we have anywhere from 5 to 10 clients in that group at any one time. So we're feeling really good about that number. We can always use more referrals from the Department of Corrections. Sometimes the diversion program, this week actually, Kate and I got an email from someone in Barron County, right? Asking if a client of theirs, I think, I'm not sure what the involvement with the system was, but if they could be part of our in-person group. So the point is our MRT group is going well. We run it on Wednesday evenings from 5:30 to 7 o'clock in New Richmond at the Services Center. So that contract will just continue with the Department of Corrections, and we'll continue to serve those clients. I know the judges, I feel like the judges make use of it, and they like to refer clients our way. So that's, I wanted to acknowledge our case managers in justice support, 3 of whom are here. They do a really nice job of rotating in each week and running that group. I think, again, my perspective, having been to one group, is that there's a nice rapport that has been developed between the clients and our case managers. So just wanted to acknowledge that. The second thing, if you remember back to, I think it would have been early in the spring of 24, our pretrial supervisor, Shelby Hilden, put together a system map, if you guys remember that exercise at all. And it had been done here in St. Croix County, I think back in 2017. And if you'd like to see, if you come up to our lobby upstairs, we've got a really nice picture of it. But we're going to continue that work here in 2025 through what's called sequential intercept modeling. And actually, we've got kind of 2 projects going on. Shelby's actually in La Crosse right now doing some training on this. And then we've got another project, Bob Rarrett and Ellie Closet and I are working with the Gain Center through SAMHSA to look at, again, some of these gaps which exist in our system. And it's not just the justice system, it's kind of the overlap between behavioral health and all of the other entities, and how can we kind of fill those gaps. So we're planning right now, we just had a planning meeting this week with these folks. In June, we're going to have a team come here to St. Croix County and help us with this mapping exercise. So you'll be getting some information from me about pretty much everybody sitting around this table. We like your participation to come and sit in on some of these sessions over the summer to kind of, again, help us look at where can we, I think, more efficiently and maybe more effectively, not that we do a poor job, but more effectively, more efficiently, address the needs in our communities. So that's kind of a big project that cuts across, I think, both the criminal legal system as well as our health and human services systems here in the county. Those are my updates.
Any questions about that? Okay. Phil, could you give us the update on substance testing?
Sure, not a ton to say here, really. Again, we have moved, so like a lot of county entities, we're from the old space to the new space. So our new space here in the government center is just right upstairs. With that, our drug testing has been moved upstairs. It's going well. We're also operating on Tuesdays and Fridays in New Richmond. We have that kind of satellite location that we've been 10 months now. Last time I checked, I think maybe 20 to 30% of our testing for diversion treatment court pretrial, and again, a small part of children's services is taking place in New Richmond. And then again, that other 70 to 80%. So kind of the lion's share is taking place here in Hudson. I have some kind of anecdotal snippets from clients. I'm sure staff can provide some other stories, but it seems that we're providing that option for clients that live in that northern part of the county. It seems to be appreciated. It is only on certain days, and it's, again, just between 8 a.m. and 4 p.m., but the clients that live in New Richmond and kind of the surrounding area seem to really like that as an option to just be able to go there, as opposed to coming to Hudson, 25 or 30 minutes each way. So we'll continue that. I think that that really helps out some of our folks.
If I could add on that, the great bulk of our treatment court participants really are from New Richmond, just because of the availability of housing, because of the sober housing community there. And so it really helps treatment court and the 3 times a week testing that we require. So we appreciate the county committing to that. And I should say, I spend some time in other counties in cases where I'm assigned, and I'm not going to name counties, but I've had high-level OWI cases in other counties, 5th and 6th offense, where there's no prejudgment testing available. There's nothing. They look at me funny when I say, well, we need to get them tested because I want to make sure the public is protected. This person will drive when drinking. And in this county, we have that service, and that's thanks to our county board and the commitment that we have from our county administrator and others. So I just want to point out that we should be grateful for that, because I find what the judges do is, particularly with OWIs, high-level OWIs, we only test a felony level and above, really, OWI 4s and above now, to try to limit the scope. But if I get positive results and I get notification from Phil's folks that they're testing positive or they're not testing, we bring them into court, we deal with them. If they don't, if it's an immediate problem, we issue a warrant for a bond violation. So we're doing things to protect the public because of what Phil and his folks are able to provide the county. So thank you.
Thanks, Judge, and thanks, Phil. Any other comments on substance testing? Okay, hearing none, we are on to the next item, which is a court navigator discussion. And Phil, it is once again you.
Sure. So I'm just going to kind of tease this item, and then you'll hear more about it. So for the second half of 2023 and all of 2024, we had a position that was ARPA funded that started out in behavioral health, transitioned over to justice support, that provided early intervention prevention services to justice-involved clients who otherwise didn't fall in a bucket of treatment court or diversion. There was some crossover there, but they were identified oftentimes by judges or attorneys that they needed some assistance, whatever that may be. And we had a staff member who was providing that service, whatever she could do. So that position has gone away, but the idea of and the spirit of that work has not. It's something that we're going to continue to work on in justice support. We're kind of re-envisioning this position, though, as not just that early intervention prevention. I think that's obviously really important. But what else could that position do if that position were to be part of our system in the future, what else could what other services could be provided? So we're calling this a court navigator. It's just something that we're exploring at this point. And so I think, here in maybe the next couple weeks or next month, we're going to trial this position out in our department is just to collect some data to see how it would be used. Again, what services could this position provide? And what other departments might benefit. I think that's the big thing, is that idea of collaboration. So while we maybe envision this position in the future, if it were to happen in justice support, it's not necessarily territorial like that, right? This position could end up in the clerk of courts, or it could end up in child support or wherever. But the point is, we have clients that have needs that they don't fall neatly into just the current systems that we have in place. Whether that is helping somebody navigate filing for an order of protection, or getting housing, or transportation, or the myriad of challenges that we all see. So I just wanted to put that on everybody's radar. This is something we're fleshing out in the department a little bit, and we're going to take on, and I'm hopeful that maybe in April I'll have some updates. We're going to try to collect, like I said, just a little bit of data to demonstrate how this position was used over a period of time. So if you have thoughts, this idea of a court navigator, we're not sold. It's on the name. It could be a resource navigator. There have been discussions in other subcommittees of calling this like an ombudsman. I don't necessarily like that so much. That's more, I think, like grievance filing, if I'm right, and we're not looking for that here to file grievances, but someone to help people navigate our criminal legal system is really what we're looking for. So, more information to come on that.
Are you anticipating that to be a full-time position?
Well, we don't have any paid positions right now. It's more of just something, so the work stopped in early December, formally in our department, but we know the need is there. I don't want to place too much on the department, on our staff, because that's really what it is our staff helping to supplement this work. I'm hopeful that it could turn into a position in the future, but I think for right now, it's something we're just going to take on as a team and try to demonstrate the need, and then get input from other departments if something were to be, if this position were out there, right? If we had those resources, what would others like to see? I guess, what are those other areas? And maybe this is a rhetorical question for everybody. What are some of those areas where there's overlap between our departments that we could see the need? And I'll just maybe throw this out as an example. This kind of an apples and oranges comparison, but like a Spanish-speaking interpreter is, I think, something that we all see. I'll just speak for justice support. We could really benefit from somebody, and I know that we have Monica, and she does a wonderful job, but we have a population that we all serve that cuts across all of our departments. So something like that we could benefit all of us, and mostly the citizens.
Okay, any questions for Phil on that? Okay, hearing none. The next item is the project to improve defendant access to counsel. Phil.
Sure, again, I'm just going to tease this one very quickly as well. Another kind of project in our department, and I'll keep it narrow and just talk about pretrial, because I don't want to necessarily get into other areas. But in pretrial, sometimes we see clients who it might take a while for them to gain access to representation, legal representation, for whatever reason. Maybe they don't qualify for a public defender. There's many reasons. And we've identified some cases where this happens. And we want to be part of the solution in justice support for our clients' sake, and certainly for other departments. But we have a pretrial work group here in the county that hasn't met in about 6 months, that we're going to meet here in a couple weeks. And we're going to talk about this project specifically, and what would this look like, and what are some things that we can maybe all do And again, from a pretrial perspective, that's our focus. But I would probably, and others feel free to weigh in here. I know this project hasn't necessarily started yet, but if there are other thoughts from other departments, do others maybe see this where there's a lag time for an assignment of either a public defender or court-appointed attorney? But I just, again, wanted to provide that we're going to be talking about this in our work group, and Judge Waterman is heads up that pretrial work group. So that will, again, be something, our criminal justice subcommittee will get an update in February on that. And then out of that subgroup, maybe in March, we'll be able to provide further information.
On that topic, I should say that it's the access to attorneys for criminal defendants is a big problem throughout the state. I would say this, in St. Croix County, judging by comparison with the other judges I speak with, we do very well. I think our public defender's office is on top of things regularly. There's occasionally delays, but they do pretty well, I think, overall. And we have a number of court-appointed attorneys that we can rely upon when they don't either qualify for a public defender or the public defender's office has a conflict and they need to use contract counsel. St. Croix County is blessed with a lot of attorneys. Other counties up north, for example, they've got nobody. I mean, they're getting their representation is coming on Zoom from Madison and other places. And so this is, I think we can be grateful that we do pretty well, but we can always use some improvements there. I sit on a committee, the Chief Justice of our Supreme Court appointed me to a committee on attorney recruitment and retention. It's such a big problem that the Chief Justice has started a project to try to figure out how to get attorneys to take these cases. First of all, how do you get attorneys? Because some of these counties simply don't have attorneys anymore to speak of that will take criminal cases. And so we haven't found any good answers, frankly. It's a whole bunch of stuff like you hear about how do you get doctors to rural communities. You pay off their student loans, you try to get them with a mentor who will take, we don't even have experienced attorneys in many counties who can serve as mentors for new attorneys coming from Madison or from somewhere else. And frankly, we have both deans of our Wisconsin law schools on this committee. And, you know, we kind of talk to each other about how do we convince UW and Marquette grads to come to St. Croix County or to Ashland County? And the answer is you can't, basically. You can get a couple every now and then if they're from here, but basically the pay and the draw of these big cities and other counties, frankly, is too great. So it's a challenge, but and I think it's worthy of a discussion, but I want to thank our Public Defender's Office here for doing a great job, I think, and all the attorneys, private counsel in our county. So thanks.
And I guess a little bit on some of the notes, thank you, Your Honor. You know, maybe the last point on the mentoring, one of the things I just personally like to kind of advertise and offer, and I have, we've had some recent new pry bar that's come into our fold that's taken both our cases and court-appointed cases. And part of the sell that I did was I agreed to mentor them, give them access to our motions, and they call nearly every day sometimes for updates, and that's fine. I appreciate that because that's part of my job, I think, and all of ours, to kind of think of creative ways to kind of recruit these individuals to say, look, we can give a hand. That's fine. And I think, Your Honor, you're right a little bit. I sometimes I don't necessarily want to kind of pat or anything like that, but I think we are a bit fortunate, and sometimes I may have the benefit, maybe more than others here, who have seen, practiced in, a dozen other counties and seen kind of the struggles exactly. And our wait list, sometimes I get called out by court officials sometimes about a case or two. They're more isolated instead of just a list of 50 or 100 that are waiting 6 months or 8 months. We're talking about an individual or two that's not having representation, and it's such an outlier that we're called in about why this isn't happening. we should feel fortunate that we're talking about outliers rather than a list of pages of people. And so cross our fingers that we can still kind of, sometimes those kind of situations happen. Cross our fingers that we don't, have an explosion, but for now, it seems to be, for the most part, a manageable number at least. And I wish it could be 100%, but sometimes, given the nature of offenses or things like that, or certain high-level cases, it's harder to find attorneys to take some types of matters. But as to the final point here, a little bit as to the project to improve defendant access to counsel. Phil, you mentioned, there are some people in custody, regardless of maybe status, that just need attorneys. And one of the things, though, that I want to take this project to kind of address is, ever since I've been up here, while we have perhaps good representation for individuals, it is my experience that, at least from the defense perspective, that at times it's been frustrating with getting maybe constant communication, consistent communication, access to individuals. And there have been tweaks and models and changes to the system, but the other thing, as I just said, is having seen many other counties, jails, and et cetera, that some of the issues of access to people in custody or the ability to meet with them before court, before a hearing, are somewhat unique to St. Croix County that I haven't seen in a dozen other counties. And the question is why? And some of it may be resources. Some of it's resources on our end. Some of it's maybe resources on jail, whatever it be. But if we're talking here about this idea of expansion and all the great things that are coming into St. Croix, well, this seems to be an opportunity about, okay, if we're going into this expansion, how are we going to have a model that, if we're going to be kind of this, idea of how to handle the system, to give everybody the proper access that, if we're talking about smaller counties with smaller resources, don't have these same issues with having contact with attorneys and people in custody, or the people in jail can't have access to resources of how to, find out details about their case, or if they have hearings in other counties that they can't get access to those, Zoom meetings. What do we do to rectify that? And so, and I think having this kind of committee would be a good opportunity to kind of brainstorm and say, hey, look, this is what we can offer, what we can't offer. This is our resources, this is what we can't do. And maybe, our defense perspective, maybe we're too demanding. Maybe it's our fault, right? But it's a good opportunity to kind of air some of this out, because I've been up here, 5 years, I haven't seen the model that really is going to be the most effective and efficient yet. There's still, whether it's pry bar, whether it's our own staff, whether it's the inmates or people in custody, I still see enough grievances and hear from them enough that something still isn't quite right in this model. And so hopefully maybe this is a springboard to kind of fix things, but it might be a good opportunity just to kind of see everybody's position and kind of see what we can do from there.
If I could add to that, and I know our public defenders being ambiguous in some ways, so we have issues on occasion that demonstrate themselves about access to people in custody. And the Sheriff's Department has got timeframes and rules and access limitations. And I'm sure that from their perspective, they all make sense and they're necessary, but they also create limitations on the public defender's access and private bar defense counsel access that creates issues, and then it all flows back up into the court system, because if they haven't had time to and an ability to meet effectively, then it delays things and it can cause those issues. And I had a discussion with the sheriff. I know he's not here, so but I can say that he's aware of this, and some of it may have to do with structural circumstances in the jail. In other words, I'm talking about the building and the rooms and the access and how so as we look at expansion, and I think that's your point, to focus in on availability of ways to make accessibility to counsel easier is going to be a real important factor.
And maybe one final point is, on that note, is there's a philosophy in other jails too, that giving the most access to counsel is the most efficient way to turn over the people in custody, right? Because if they don't get access, it's going to cause more hearings, and they want to do everything they can, they'll bend over to give them access to counsel because we want to get them in court. We want to get them these cases resolved because we only have so many beds. And if we don't give them access, then we're just going to be stalling them and we're going to have this access problem. And so that's why many jails will say, yes, whatever we can do, we'll grab them right now and bring them here. And even with limited resources. And that's why, how do we get to that point here so we can kind of have this most efficient model as well?
Any other comments on that? Thank you both for your perspectives on that. Next, we will be hearing a presentation from peer support specialists Sophie Hansen and Kyle Van Blerkom. Go ahead, thank you.
Well, good morning, everybody. We appreciate the opportunity to come in here and share a little bit about ourselves and what we do to support people. My name is Kyle Van Blerkom. I'm a certified peer support specialist and a recovery coach.
And I'm Sophie Hansen, same thing, certified peer specialist and recovery coach.
We work for Northwest Passage, and we support people, mostly referrals that we receive from behavioral health. We do get some referrals from the jail social worker. We kind of support people through the continuum of care, yeah. Yep. So we both have this is your slide, sorry.
Okay. Okay, so what are certified peer specialists? I always like to say, essentially, they are people that have been through a particular experience, helping another person navigate a similar experience. We are people with lived experience. We both are in recovery. We have justice involvement. We've been incarcerated. I mean, so much.
Spent a lot of time in the jail
Spent
downstairs.
a lot of time downstairs. So we've been there, done that. When the important part is that we made it out, right? Not only did we make it out, we're thriving. So, and that's the goal. So we're trained professionals. This is important as well because oftentimes you hear like, oh, peer support specialists, are they just paid friends, right? It's important to have that that boundary and knowledge that we are trained. We go through a specific training. We have to get so many CEUs every year. We attend a lot of conferences. So yeah, we are trained professionals. We support people's recovery journey and whatever that looks like, right? I know it can be different for if you're justice involved, if you're on a, absolute sobriety and, there's so many stipulations, right? But our job, is to support them. And then model recovery, this is really important for peer specialists. As I've mentioned, sometimes they don't have anybody to see that has made it out, right? Or they don't have a lot of support that's been through what they've been through. So having somebody that can model, what it could look like is really important. And then connected to the community. For me, I think of not only the recovery community, that could be meetings, AA meetings, whatever kind of community, recovery community, but also with resources through the county and all the others.
All right, so why peer support matters. I think a big thing is building trust in someone, self. Others, a lot of people that come into the system, they are very trusting. And also systems, kind of bridging the gap in a lot of ways to seeking treatment or, going to detox or maybe telling the truth, to providers about what's really going on so they can help. And then we have a lot more flexibility in our role. So I guess an example of kind of what comes to mind for me is being able to support somebody while they're in custody, going and meeting with them at the jail and really talking about what's this going to look like when we get out? Are we going to go into sober living? Are we going to, and being able to provide them, those resources, getting on a rapid rehousing list. Maybe I've picked up a lot of people from the jail, that's a big one. I remember many times getting released and I was using by the time I left the parking lot. So that's the reality. You might have the best intentions sitting in jail, but it all changes. So you really gotta, come up with the plan. Resource navigators, I think that's a big one. We don't do anything for anybody. Like, they have to do it themselves, but we're there to support them through that and show them. And a lot of times, when they get familiar with filling out the application or building the resume or whatever that looks like for them, they build confidence through that. So, and then exploring healthy coping strategies. So we use our lived experience. Hey, this is a big one in jail. People are like, oh, I'm losing my mind in here. It's like, maybe read a book or something. Like, just sharing kind of what that looks like or what that's looked like for me.
And with that one too, I think it's important to note the difference between certified peer specialists and other professionals. We can tell them like, hey, this is what worked for me in my life. Most professionals can't give that kind of information, right? So there's that mutuality that can be super helpful in these kind of situations. All right, so why we're here, peer support in the justice system. So some of the ways that we are connected with the justice system as far as peer support goes, and we just put down some like the key things that we are doing, right? So court appearances, this is a big one for me. I know Kyle works a lot more in the jail. I have a lot of peers, I'd say about like 50% of them that are justice involved, at least 50% that either are actively going to court or they're done going to court. So not only bringing people there, but supporting them while they're there, right? And helping them to understand the information. Advocacy, for this one, what pops out to me is working with people that are involved in children's services or CPS. Advocacy, it can look like a lot of different things, right? For me, a lot of it is education, helping them understand what's really going on, and if they need a voice, if they're afraid to speak up about something, supporting them while they do that, and if needed, doing it for them, with them. Transportation, this is a biggie. So we do spend a lot of time bringing people places, right?
In our cars, yeah.
In our cars.
Driving.
And that's a huge barrier for people, especially getting out of jail, especially if you're, in early recovery, maybe you don't got a job, you're trying to get your life together.
You got a drug test, you gotta go meet with the PO, you gotta do all these things, you gotta go to outpatient, it's hard, and then you don't have a driver's license or a vehicle, or you live in Star Prairie, is that St. Croix County?
Yeah, that's
okay.
Sure is.
So there's just a lot of barriers. So we try to help with that. Obviously, it's got to fit into like that recovery goals that we establish early on. So we're working towards something.
Yeah, so it's really important. I do tell my peers this, especially if that's going to be a big reason why they're seeing me, like, oh, I need right to treatment. We say, okay, well, we need to come up with some goals. How can we implement that into your goals, right? Are we working on your overall wellness? Are we working on your recovery? So we do give people rights. It's important, though, and I do note, we are not taxis. It's important that we're also working on other things. But a lot of the great conversations you have is in the car, right? So.
So we share our personal experience. There's a lot of times when people don't care, to hear your story, but I think when it's helpful, it can be impactful for people. I always, when I go into the jail and you're talking, I'm like, yeah, I've spent a lot of time in here, and sometimes that's an icebreaker for people, to kind of build that rapport. Assistance with navigating the justice system. It can be overwhelming for folks. It's a lot, and a lot of people don't understand. So, if we can point them in the right direction or tell them who they want to talk to or should talk to in a certain situation, we try to, point them to maybe who can help them.
Well, also pointing out that we are not professionals in this field, right? Like, I've always, I'm not a lawyer, but I can help you find some phone numbers to call some people, and I can empower you to make these calls.
And then providing resources. I mean, in my backpack, I have tons of resources, it's like, so just kind of being up to date on that. And then ultimately offering hope, that you can get through this. It might seem like an overwhelming situation right now, but you can come out the other side. So.
And I think that if we were to really have one word for what peer support is, I'd say it's hope, right? It's giving people hope. Like, this person has gone through what I've been through, and they got out of it, right? And so it's really providing that hope for people. All right, we're just gonna give a couple little success stories. So one that I have, without saying any names, I have a woman that I'm working with. She is elderly, she's in her late 70s. She, in the past year and a half, she never been in legal trouble her whole life, right? Had lived a really fortunate life. her husband passed away. She got 2 DUIs back to back in different states. So her life was like chaos, right? I started working with her, navigating, going to court with her, helping her with her lawyer, contacting the lawyer. I mean, her anxiety was so bad that she couldn't even make these calls without some support. So really navigating that with her, going with her. She had some jail time. She was really, really worried about that. I encouraged her. I helped empower her. I told her, gave her my experience. She got through it all, went to the other state, took care of that too with my, some of my support. I didn't go with her, obviously, although it would have been nice because it's warmer. But yeah, so I mean, she made it through all this. And also I brought her to the DMV, helped advocate with her to figure out how can we get her this occupational, get her IID, I think is what it's called. So now everything is done except for, that one last IID. But it's pretty exciting, right, to see somebody who really wouldn't have been able to do this on her own. So.
Yeah, I think just I've had a few people, they're sitting in jail and we make a plan and they execute, and that's awesome. They'll get out, they'll go to sober living or they'll go to treatment. Because let's face it, there's a period of time when you get out of jail, like a lot can change, and so just kind of seeing that play out, and then. I mean, there's so many people getting their licenses back, their kids back. I mean, so, yeah.
And that's something too, I've been to court so many times with my peers, and I think only one time did somebody have another person there to support them. Yeah. And it was just a friend that happened to be in the area. But oftentimes they don't have anybody, and they don't have one person to come with them, even for little court dates or whatever you would consider. So that's really peer support is here to fill that gap and really just be that support for them. So, anybody have any questions? I think that was it. Yeah, questions.
Okay, thank you both.
I don't have a question. I just have a quick comment. From a justice support services perspective, from our department's perspective, or at least from my perspective, I won't speak for anybody else. Peer supports are able to fill a gap or a void that our staff can't. For many reasons, because of not having lived experience or just because of the boundaries that we have as case managers and individuals that work in the system versus peer support. I think those boundaries are a little bit differently. And could you maybe say a little bit about establishing those boundaries with your peers early on? Could you maybe talk just briefly about that, what that looks like?
So I think the conversation, especially when it's people that are in the justice system, most of the time, peer support's totally voluntary. So it has to be them wanting the service. But we talk about, what happens in this situation. Let's say they're using or maybe they're in drug court and there's certain expectations with that. Probation. I mean, we always encourage honesty in those situations, but it does come down to a point where it's like, are we going to go tell together or am I going to tell? And that's really to protect, I think, the sanctity of the program, right?
Yep. And it's also important to note that, like, when we first meet with somebody, we always have that talk. I just met with a new peer yesterday, and I talked to her about boundaries and about, I mentioned how I go to a certain meeting. If your name comes up, do you want me to say anything? Do you want me to let them know how it's going? Peer support, primarily it's really person-centered, but also I understand, working in the justice system, it can be a little bit different. But. Any other questions?
Phil, could I say something real quick? First of all, you both do a wonderful work. And Sophie and Kyle are the result, actually, of a proposal that we wrote back in 2021 to use ARPA funding to fund peer recovery or certified peer specialist positions. And then we contracted with Northwest Passage, who hired these two wonderful individuals. But with the county administrator's help and with the board's support, we're able to continue funding through ARPA for these positions through 2025. After that, we'll have to figure out how we're going to be able to continue supporting positions like this. In my career, I've seen the effect of certified peer specialists in a variety of settings, and the impact is so meaningful and helps to prevent higher costs, higher acuity placements because they're able to listen and professionally work with people on recovery goals in from a lived experience perspective. So anyway, I really, really believe in the value that both of you offer to behavioral health care. And I think you two specifically were both a good find. So we're very glad that you're still working with us.
Yeah.
And we'll keep looking for funding.
Thanks, Bob.
Quick question. So for the peer support, is it limited strictly to those that are involved in the criminal justice system?
So the only requirement is they have to be a resident of St. Croix County. So right now, we're funded under ARPA funds, so it's really loosey-goosey. It's going to change, probably, but right now, I think through the end of the year, that's kind of the only
So
requirement. which is-
anybody, you just,
And yeah, then they have to be willing.
yep, and they would just contact the services center, if you know anybody, or you get our cards and just contact us directly. We can get them signed up.
So in my courtroom, I deal a lot with juveniles. Is that an option? Or is there restrictions on that? I know on our side, we have restrictions on that. And Phil, maybe this is something we can look into, but offering a resource a lot of times to parents that are struggling with juvenile, or a juvenile that I think
Yeah.
is seeing some repeat behaviors and trying to push them toward you as an option. Is that something that's available, or is there a restriction on ages?
No, I don't think that. I know about a year ago I asked that, and there's not a restriction on ages. Neither of us have worked with anybody under 18 yet. You haven't, right, Kyle? No. But ideally, prevention, right? I mean, we both started getting in trouble when we were really young. So, I mean, that's something that we can definitely look into and get more answers on.
Or at least, point them in the right direction.
Yes.
There are
Their
parent peers, there's peer supports in other systems too, so maybe.
Yeah,
even
for the
being aware.
parents to have peer support, there's, certified parent and peer specialists.
Okay. All right. I'll just, appreciate it. Thank you.
I had a question too, well, two questions. So what does an average day look like for you? I mean, just, is it more in office where the person comes to see
Never in
you, or are
office.
you out
We don't
in?
have offices.
Okay,
Offices
so-
are car.
So you go to their homes or wherever they are? and-
Wherever we ask them, where
Coffee
would you feel more
shops,
comfortable? Yep, a lot of coffee shops,
We'll
a
meet
lot of.
here, for some reason, they never want to meet at the government center. I don't know why.
Yeah, I've never met somebody here, but really anywhere. I mean, ideally, it's out in the community. That's what we're doing, is we're trying to help them get more connected to their community. A lot of, during the summertime, parks, nature center, the,
Kayaking.
I haven't done that yet.
I
Have you
haven't
done
either,
that?
but
Oh.
we talk
It's
about
always nice when you get a peer that likes stuff like that. It's like, okay, cool, let's go do it. Yeah, a lot of outdoor stuff, a lot of coffee shops. Yeah, so libraries, a lot of libraries, depending on if the person, oftentimes the people that we work with are low income, so they might not have money, so library, renting a room there. The services center is like, a backup too if needed.
Okay. And then, so how would, if I had some clients that I felt would be beneficial, how do I get them connected with you?
So, we can send you the referral form. I'm gonna be honest, we're kind of going through,
Yeah, so we're both kind of at our capacity almost right now. I just took on.
and it changes.
But it fluctuates. So I mean, I did start like kind of a little bit of a wait list, and I'm just starting to take more peers on. But yeah, definitely we can give you our information, send you the referral.
Awesome, thank you.
Contact them, intake me, really.
Yeah, intake, that's a big one too, just contacting intake at the services center.
Yeah, okay. Well, thank you for your work.
Yeah, that was going to be one of my questions. What is your carrying capacity for caseload? How many cases can one person handle?
Oh, I mean, there was a point where I had like 20, but now I'm also a full-time student. I'm doing my internship. I'm a single mom. So now that I'm back in school, right now I have around 10. I think Kyle, you said you had 8
Yeah,
right
about
now.
10. And it fluctuates. I mean, you might have someone that goes off to treatment
Yes.
for 4 months and you don't see them, or they're go to prison or whatever it is. So, I feel like right now I'm right around 10 or 12 people. So, I've had as many as
20,
18 or
25.
20 at one point. So,
Yeah, and it's just like recovery, right? It's nonlinear. So I mean, it goes up and down. People disappear, they come back.
some people meet once a month, some people meet once a week. It just really depends on their needs too. So. Definitely, if you have anybody, send them.
Yeah,
over
and just,
we'll-
we'll look at it and let you know about like the wait time if there is one. Anything else?
Any other questions? All right, well, thank you both. That was
Thank you.
really good to hear about, and thank
Yeah.
you for your work.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Last, we have the subcommittee reports, and we will start with behavioral health. So Bob, could you get us up to speed?
Sorry.
Caught
That
you off
happened to
guard,
me
didn't
last
I?
night, too. I was distracted, and I got put on the spot. So we last met in November 25th, and our next meeting with the Behavioral Health Subcommittee will be on the 27th of this month. We covered a variety of things, reviewed a few grants that we had at the time recently received. One was the startup funding for a dementia crisis stabilization unit. The Kitty Rhodes facility at the healthcare campus is the facility that we intend to use as a result of this grant money to begin offering dementia care for up to 10 patients there anytime now, as soon as we finish hiring some CNAs. But we discussed that grant. It was a $600,000 grant, planning and preparation for opening, and that money has to be spent by the end of February. So we had a short period of time there to build up this facility and get it ready for opening, and we hope again to do that this month. Another grant that we discussed was from the APS, or the Adult Protective Services area. Amber and Shar Lopez, our deputy director, wrote a grant for $100,000 a year for 4 years, and it's called the Abuse in Later Life. Is that kind of the title, Amber? Abuse in Later Life grant. The idea there is to develop coordination between law enforcement, the judges, the DA's office, and our APS unit, and really coordinating with this dementia care unit. But training and coordination between the different various departments and divisions in order to better respond to adult protective cases. Amber was very instrumental in writing that grant, and then Shar sort of took it over and did some of the budget work, and we talked about that in a little more detail. We also spoke about the state opioid response grant. At the time, we hadn't received it, and we were anticipating about $300,000 a year for 3 years, I believe, and ended up getting less than that. The reason was it was a more competitive grant cycle this year, so we had to compete with a number of other new proposals. We did get the award, though. Natalie spoke about what that grant would entail. At the time, we thought we were getting a larger amount, so there were some different discussions about what we could pay for and what we couldn't. And we'll get an update on that at our next Behavioral Health Subcommittee from Natalie, I hope. And then the last grant-related thing was we received a grant to buy a public health or a harm reduction vending machine, which contains harm reduction products like Narcan, drug disposal kits, safer sex kits, really any kind of harm reduction product that you want to distribute to the public, and things that we already do distribute to the public. This vending machine arrived finally in December, and actually Kyle and Sophie I put in charge of stocking and operating, and it comes with software and all kinds of stuff that I don't understand. So we have that in the vestibule area of the services center. As you walk in the front entrance there, you'll see a big vending machine that's all lit up with nothing in it. But that soon will be available to the public, and all the products are free of charge, so people can just come in and in a semi-private way get whatever they want from that vending machine. We talked a little bit about the demographic report that came out from Forward Analytics, sort of the research arm of the WCA, Wisconsin Counties Association. That demographic shift had to do with the baby boomer generation aging and the increase in the aging population, with a simultaneous decrease in the workforce projected over the next few years, or a couple of decades actually. So we talked about how that would impact or could impact certainly what we do in human services, in all areas really of healthcare, adult protection, the nursing home, and all of those areas. But that report is available if you ever want to look at it on the WCA website under Forward Analytics or go to Forward Analytics. And it's a bit of an eye-opener if you haven't seen it. And then we discussed legislative priorities going into the next session. At the time in November, we had a preliminary idea of the sorts of policy papers that we might want to explore as a subcommittee that would fit with the mission of what we were intending to do. Since then, we've, I think, refined some of those priority areas, and we'll be talking about that at the next meeting in more detail. Some white papers or policy papers have been drafted, so we'll review those. And then Phil talked about the sequential intercept model grant that he referred to earlier, sort of an extension of an earlier effort to develop a white paper around how to re-examine our system of care, the interface between criminal justice involved persons, behavioral health division, other areas of healthcare, hospitals and jail, et cetera. And this sequential intercept model was something that we were aware of and sort of explored, but I think this grant that we're part of now that you got, Phil, will help us look thoroughly at how we can use that effectively to recommend changes if we do. And I don't think there was anything else. There was a specific case about law enforcement raised. Chief, you were, I think, the one that brought that to our attention, but there was a situation where we're trying to understand how in a case where somebody has a severe medical condition or a specific kind of medical condition, can they be transported by a ambulance instead of a squad car to, say, Winnebago or some facility like that. And I believe we looked at the chapter 51, to better understand where the flexibility is in that, if any. And Chief, if you have any additional comments around that from that conversation.
Yeah, and it was actually a case that came out of New Richmond that we talked about at the Chiefs meeting, and there was some just general question on if you have a person that is adverse to being in a squad car, and in this particular case, it was actually, there was a physical manifestation of a medical situation where they were having seizures and basically stopping breathing while they were in a squad car in a crisis situation on what are the options for how to get them to a facility when putting them in a squad car just doesn't work. I mean, it literally, they were put in and within 15 minutes of driving towards the facility, had to stop at another hospital, get medical attention, and to do that all the way to Appleton is not an option. And so really looking at how, if there was any requirement for ambulance services to assist in that manner, or how to get those resources to come forward. And there wasn't a great answer at the meeting, and it was something that we definitely wanted to talk about, but we had the right people to start the conversation, and so it's an ongoing consideration. Now, it seems like this was one case, but it was one that was probably going to be revisited over and over again, and so how to make sure that we understood the resources to make sure, again, as we all try to look forward to making sure that person in crisis, gets the best service available to them, and that we don't make it worse just because of our processes that are in place.
I believe that, thank you, Chief. There will be an ongoing conversation in there to try and find solutions to that issue. Maybe Corporation Counsel can be helpful with that as well.
This makes sense why Lakeview EMS has reached out and asked for a meeting. So now I understand the backstory to it. So yes, I will work on that with the partners involved to see if we can get an answer to that.
And I think that was the bulk of what we talked about, and we'll be meeting again, like I said, in about a week and a half.
All right, any other questions about that? Oh, thank all three of you. I think that has been a discussion in subcommittee groups of one kind or another since I started going to subcommittee groups on this. The issues with transportation for people in crisis is a serious issue. So the next update is on child welfare and juvenile justice, and I think I saw Anjali. Oh, there you are. Thanks.
Morning. So it's been a couple of months since we have had a meeting. Our last meeting was on October 10th. Our next meeting is scheduled for tomorrow, so we're getting back on track. The last meeting was primarily for updates. We had somebody start in the opioid position in behavioral health. We were specifically discussing what her role is going to be in the child welfare system. So her involvement in the child welfare system will be to provide parents with an assessment so that they can get into treatment faster. That had been one of the identified ongoing issues prior to her starting. There was wait times for parents to get these assessments so that they can start getting treatment and start moving towards having their kids back in their care. So that has been a great improvement over the last couple of months since she started, and we're continuing to work with her to see what other resources that she can specifically provide to parents to continue on this path of getting kids back home sooner and having their needs addressed. Additionally, there was an update about the truancy position. So there's a youth intervention position that was, it's a brand new position in Children's Services. So an individual has been hired for that. She just recently started, I believe, in the last maybe month or two. And so her role is being defined. She's still getting started and working on that. Hopefully, we will have some updates about what it is she's able to accomplish long term. But we did want to let everybody know that is a new position, and somebody has been hired for it. We've been continuing to have truancy discussions. Not a lot of updates on that. We are having both policy discussions related to truancy as well as discussions about updating our local court rules. There's a lot of discussion about how the policies we would love to implement here in St. Croix County may or may not work very well with our state statutes or with our county partners. So we have a lot of municipalities in St. Croix County that have their own municipal courts. They handle truancy at the municipal level, and so then how does that interact with the state statutes? How does that interact then with the policies that we're trying to implement here at the county level, at the circuit court level? And so that continues to be an ongoing process. We are going to have further discussions with those municipal counterparts to see if they are willing to come to the table and work with us on those issues. Judge Vlack, myself, and Michelle Lesha had the opportunity to go to a child welfare conference specifically related to domestic violence and how that interacts or impacts children and the non-offending parent in those situations. We did update our subcommittee on all of our learnings there. We have talked about what could be done. I think our plan is not to address that further in the child welfare subcommittee group, but instead to address that in the domestic violence subcommittee group. It feels like it is the more proper place to handle that because there is quite a bit of overlap between the criminal cases and those child welfare cases. And so having a cohesive plan where all of our stakeholders, which are part of the domestic violence subcommittee, can have input, it is the more appropriate place for that. So we have something in St. Croix County called the Judicial Engagement Team. So there's a lot of overlap between our Child Welfare Subcommittee and the Judicial Engagement Team. One of the things we've been working on in both groups is something called Tailored Dispositional Project. And essentially what that is we are coming up with ways to specifically tailor conditions in CHIPS cases, in child welfare cases, and juvenile delinquency cases to the individual family or the individual child versus in the past, sometimes we have used more of like a form list. Everybody has to do these no matter if it's specific to your case or not. And so we're trying to move away from that and just address the specific needs of every single family. So that is an ongoing project. I know that at our next judicial engagement team meeting, we're going to be addressing that further. And likely we will be addressing it again at not tomorrow's meeting for the Child Welfare Subcommittee, but the following one. So we do have a meeting scheduled for tomorrow. In the interim, since it's been a few months since our last meeting, a small group of us have been working on on informational pamphlets for parents and children in delinquencies and truancy and juveniles in need of protection cases. So the plan for tomorrow is to present those pamphlets to the subcommittee for feedback. The process then would be we would receive the feedback, our small group would get together again, implement any feedback that we receive, and then we have been working with the Children's Court Improvement Project down in Madison, so we would send it to them for further feedback and then implement that here in St. Croix County. Our meeting is in 2100 tomorrow. I think that's all I got. Thanks.
Just, Anjali, it's next Thursday.
Yeah, you're so right. It's
okay.
next Thursday.
It's all right. It's okay. Because otherwise we would have been in trouble because I haven't posted the agenda. So
yeah, you are very right. It
That's
is
okay.
Today is Thursday, so that wouldn't make any sense. So next Thursday, 2100. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? No? Okay, thanks.
Oh, thank you for being a real human, Anjali. All right, next, if we could get we did an adult treatment court update, but Judge Nordstrand or Kate, if there's any, nor Judge Nordstrand. Kate, if there's anything you would like to add as far as the subcommittee update.
Yeah, we just have a few things. We haven't talked too much in our subcommittee. Our last one was in October. We've really updated all of our policies, etc. Right now, though, we are going to be talking about our trainings. So the issue that has become for the last few years is that we go to these big trainings, state trainings and our national trainings. Well, we're getting knowledge about things, new drug trends, inclusion and equity and those things. We're getting the knowledge, but we're not getting how to actually execute them in our county. And that's become a huge problem. We do all the surveys. Hey, you're telling us all this information. How do I change my client's thought then? It's great that I have the information, but it's not changing my department because I don't know what to do with that here. So we have been looking at trainings on specific team members, what they're doing, the sheriff's office, what specifically can they get training on, that kind of stuff. So that's going to come up. We have in our TAD grant that we're using funding for our national trainings, but could it be better served somewhere else that's actually going to help St. Croix County? So that's probably one of our big things that we're looking at. And the other one is probably how to get referrals in faster right now. It should be a standard that we get referrals within 30 days of somebody's arrest. That's basically never happening unless we're getting ATRs from Department of Corrections. They're putting them in custody. We're getting those right away. But we want to help our clients faster so we can get them on the list faster and identifying them faster. So that is another thing we are working on. And our next meeting is soon, Phil.
I believe
Probably.
it's Wednesday, March 12th.
Yes. There it is. March 12th. That's it.
Kate, is there ever anyone from drug court that's at initial appearances in the criminal cases that could be there, that even for those who maybe don't have a public defender appointed yet or something, that to kind of get that idea in front of them early on in the process?
So we did just discuss that.
Yeah.
Because we are in justice services, we always have somebody in pretrial there. They are actually starting to identify those people right away because they're already looking at all of their criminal history, all of that stuff already. So they are starting to identify for us so that me and my case manager don't need to be there all the time.
Sure.
So that has started, yes.
Awesome. Thank you. Any other questions for Kate? Okay. I see no Judge Flack here today. Phil, can you fill us on that domestic violence subcommittee?
Sure. Next meeting is next Wednesday, the 22nd at 11:30 upstairs in 2100. We'll have a presentation from Turning Point, I believe, and some other discussions. If you're available, please join us then.
Right. And the last subcommittee is criminal justice, and with Judge Waterman absent today, it is back to you, Phil.
Sure. So I had alluded to this earlier. We're going to have a pretrial work group meeting to discuss some of these access to representation things. That'll be here in the next couple weeks. And then I believe it's Monday, February, did I put a date on there? Monday, February 10th is the next Criminal Justice Subcommittee meeting, also in 2100 at noon.
That is the last of the subcommittee reports. Is there a request for future agenda items from anyone? Don't all raise your hands at once. If you have any ideas before the next meeting, let Phil or Judge Needham or anyone know. And then we'll move on. Are there any announcements from any members of the community or the committee? Go ahead, Bob.
Thank you. This potentially could be an agenda item for future meetings, but our family service, our children's services division recently received an award notice to develop a family treatment court. It would be $125,000 a year for 3 years. That just recently, that award announcement was just recently received, so I don't have a lot of information about next steps yet. We haven't even signed the contract with the state yet, but that is a potential area for discussion as we get more information about that and get a little further along in the process. And it would be to assist families, to improve outcomes for families where substance use or misuse is an issue with that family.
Oh, that's great. Any other announcements?
Yeah, excuse me. Yeah, thank you, Kate. I'd like to preface this by thanking Administrator Witt. Over the past few years, his patience, vigilance, and effort have helped secure a contract with the state of Wisconsin for us to relocate here effective July 1st. So the Department of Corrections will be relocating to the Government Center. Matter of fact, the hallway right behind us, go to the end, take a left, go to the end. We're there, and they've already started construction. We've gotten quite far here. I'd like to thank you. We will be here effective July 1st. As a matter of fact, Administrator Witt helped set up, but we had a Christmas party here with the staff. And he took a tour of all the staff through our new offices. Everybody was pretty excited about it. So get ready. You invited the kids from the other side of the track to your bar here. So get ready for us to come, and we'll be here with our 1,200 plus clients going through your doors. But thank you, and we're very excited for our relocation here in a few months. So
great. Well, thank you. Anything else? Oh, yes, go ahead.
I just wanted to announce we have a new case manager under our SORP. Oh, sorry, I just didn't want to do that. I wanted to be more informal because I always do it wrong. But I just wanted to introduce Eric Hoggy. Some of you recognize him from being a co-responder. So he's amazing. He's going to be our new SOR 4 case manager, which we talked a little bit about. We got a little bit less funding, but we still have residential treatment, recovery housing, his position. And we're going to also use his position a little bit to connect clients better with MA. Because on our end over at the service center, sometimes we have people going to treatment, what have you, and then we get stuck with these big bills that go off out of the levy, which we are trying to avoid. So we're kind of building the plan as we go, per se. We don't exactly know. We don't have job duties printed out or anything like that, but we're really happy to have him. He's been spending a lot of time in the jail with Bill, so we're really going to beef up our re-entry. The MAT program is on hold, but we're still connecting clients to all of the resources. You know, we provide MAT in our outpatient clinic with Vivitrol. So we're still doing the things. We're just not doing inductions in the jail right now, and we're continuing to look for additional funding to revive that program. But anyway, really excited for Eric and really want people to connect him. If you have clients that don't have MA, maybe just have a question. We're going to try to really connect clients the best that we can. He's going to mostly be emphasizing his work with like opiates and stimulant use clients. But again, anybody who doesn't have MA, if you can connect him to him, you know, we'll try to work it out as best as we can. We have a lot of services and a lot of things, so want to really help clients. So welcome, Eric.
Thank you for that. Any other announcements? This is a big announcements day. All right, hearing none other, the next meeting will be on March 13th, and we are adjourned. Thank you.